Thank you very much, Avner, for this shameless, exaggerated promotion. But it's nice to hear, you repeat it so many times, so many years, I will begin to believe it. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for coming to this wonderful conference. I would like to thank Ila and Avner and Lior and the whole team which created it. This conference respected, I don't know, respect something, position in the whole arena of international meetings which discuss the importance of creativity and innovation in cities. And in a few minutes we are going to hear one of the real experts of the world discussing it. Since you started this promotion, let me do a very quick promotion. First of all, I'm one of the people who are standing behind the DLD. I'm usually sitting or lying if it's much better. The real force is Steffi. I don't think she is here. She went to Jerusalem. And the Burda media people which started, Burda is here. Burda, stand up. And they started it 10 years in Munich in a humble way, and this brand gained really world exception. We have DLD events in Munich in the winter, in Munich in the summer, DLD Women. We had it in Russia, in London, in Rio de Janeiro. We had the DLD community events in Warsaw, in Palo Alto, in New York, and one in Tel Aviv, together with a nice collaboration of Burda Media, Oscar for B, and Tel Aviv City. We decided that we will try here to position it as a festival, not as just a conference, and it works extremely well. All of you are invited to come tomorrow, Wednesday, 2 minutes? I have to read to you what she said. She said, I remind you to invite eventually Imad and Buren to speak also. Thank you. That was a good reminding. One word about DLD. We have tomorrow at late afternoon and the evening outing to Rothschild Boulevard with tens of events. All of you are invited. This was 60 seconds or more about DLD. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite a very good friend of mine, Imad Elhami. I have to tell you a little bit about Imad. Imad was number 2 at Delta Textile. He ran 15,000 employees, I think, at that time, and in 30 countries, 15 countries. And if you went in Europe, 1 out of every 9 males used to wear the underwear that Imad manufactured for him. Maybe you knew it under the name CNA, Otto, Marks and Spencer, etc. When Israel phased out from the textile industry, lot of girls in the villages in the Galilee were left without work. And Imad decided that he is going to create a modern alternative to these people, which are Druze and Christians and Muslims and Jews and Orthodox Jews. And within 5 years, he created an enterprise which employed these people in business processes. This is called, and software and other things. And now, how many people you are employing? 1,300 in 5 years. And it's all the talent and the commitment, and mainly the charm of Imad. Be careful of him, he is a professional charmer. And the second guy I would like to invite to the podium, Ila, how much time another 5 minutes? Is Bjorn. Bjorn, remind me how to pronounce your last name because I always fail. Haman? Haman? Okay, Bjorn, together with other two Israelis, right? Your two partners are Israelis?
I have two, yes.
You have two. They created a very interesting project which is called Startup Genome. And they studied, how many startups did you study?
Now we have almost 100,000 companies globally, but back when we did the ecosystem report, we had about 50,000.
So they studied 50,000 and they tried to extract what are the parameters of startup to succeed. And this is very, very important report. I advise everybody to look at it. He will tell you the URL. About 4 months ago or half a year ago, how long ago?
Almost a year ago.
Almost a year ago, he published a report where he said that Israel is second only, Tel Aviv is second only to Silicon Valley as a creativity hub. I insisted that Tel Aviv is not second only to Silicon Valley. I defined it that Tel Aviv is the first one after Silicon Valley, right? And Bjorn made an objective study. It's very objective because it supports us, which created waves in the world, and he has done a terrific service to the community here, but more important, he made terrific service to people who are running cities to understand what it takes to make a city creative, how to attract the creative people. Yesterday, he was awarded of being, Ila, what is the title you bestowed about him yesterday? Honorary citizen of the state of Israel, of Tel Aviv, which means that as long as he doesn't live in Tel Aviv, he doesn't have to pay municipal taxes. Okay, I will join you. I have a microphone? Or? I want you to talk, yes. I have to ask you a question or just give you the... Imad, we know that in addition of revamping employment in the Galilee, you are now contemplating a very interesting project in Haifa, which have both social and business parameters. So are you willing to share with us what you are doing so we can copy you?
Okay, thank you, Yossi, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Actually, I'll be talking about why the Israeli Arabs are not part of the Israeli entrepreneurship and the startup businesses. And this is really a big question because today, Arabs in Israel are 20% of the country. And actually, if you will ask me how many startups was there, or how many exits on the high-tech industry or the internet startups, I can't tell you, 0. There is none. And actually, we live here in an industry that this is the real asset of the country, of entrepreneurship and startups, and we are not a part of it. The question is why? And I defined a few reasons that, there is some objective reasons and there is other reasons. The objective reasons usually are, we can say, first of all, somebody said earlier that there is Tel Aviv and the greater Tel Aviv. I will say there is 2 states in Israel. There is the greater Tel Aviv state and all the rest, okay? And Arabs lives with all the rest of the greater Tel Aviv, and this is one of the reasons because 80% of the money and 90% of the startups are done in the greater Tel Aviv. But the other reasons there is, Arabs are not involved in the high-tech industry enough, and they are only 1.5% on the high-tech industry. There is, they are not part of the army. So this is, I will call it some of the objective reasons, but I'm not going to talk about these objective reasons. I will talk about the main reason that is split to 5 fears that I will tell you about, the fears that we have, and I believe that this is the main reasons. First of all, the big reason, I call it dreaming. Dreaming means that, Arabs can't dream big in this country. And when you ask a graduate students, Arab graduate, and you ask him, what's your dream really? The answer will be, you know what, I want a great job, good job with a good salary, that I will be able to, with a good company, of course, and I will be able to buy a car and build the house and get married and have children and live, good life. And this is the big dream. No one will think that, big dream can be, maybe I will make my own company, maybe I will have my own startup, maybe we'll do something. And this is, I will call it, this is the really, really the main reason when you can't dream big, so you can't be big. And this is, part of the things that we can see today, and we should start to work on it. But it's split to 5 fears why they can't dream big. There's 5 fears that the first one of them is fear of failure. Arabs, for them, failure is a disaster. When you fail, you can't get up. Why? It's a small community. Failure is something that they believe that from there, I have no chance. So people will not take risk. They can't fail. So if I can't fail, so why I will take a risk? Risk is a failure. So there is no risk being taken because of this reason. The second reason is fearing of the government. Feeling of the government, they believe that the government will not support Arab businesses. The government, when they will look at the settlements and Arab settlements compared to Jewish settlement, you can see the difference. So they believe that government will not support the Arab business. So, why to try? We know that they will not subsidize it, they will not give us a help. So why to go, why to try? There is no need to try. The third fear is fearing of banking. Banking and financially, when you need to make a startup, you need to have a financial support. And actually, banks is difficult today to get. It's almost impossible to get a loan from the bank. To be able to get a loan, you must give your land and house to Shabed. How you say it? To Shabed. Mortgage, I don't know. So whatever. So if you need money, you need to do something for that. So no, we don't try. If I have money in my pocket, I will try. Don't have money in my pocket, I will not try. The fourth reason I call it the fear of the unknowing. The unknowing means that, I don't know what will happen. If I will look at the Arab community and I will find success stories, you know what? There is we said earlier, there is no startups, so there is no success stories. If there is no success stories, there is no role models. And if there is no role models, there is no people that we can come to them and ask them to be part of mentorship. New startup needs a mentorship. And if there is no mentorship, so why I will succeed? No one else before me succeeded, so why I will succeed? So this is really a big fear. And the last fear, the fifth fear, is I call it the networking, that I will cope alone. I feel I will cope alone, that my networking is very little. I have no networking. I can't reach the big company worldwide. I can't reach the best technology in the world. I can't reach the others. My networking is very, very little, and this is part of the fear. And today we know that startups, first of all, networking is the biggest part of really giving the right support and to find the right direction. So these 5 fears makes people really frightened from being and taking this risk for making startup. So one of the things that we thought about, and this is what Yossi said earlier, is that we thought that the solution is building incubator in Haifa. And this is what I'm trying to do with the two VCs in Israel, big VCs, that they will help me to do it. And the idea is that this VC will be for 30 to 40 entrepreneurs, Arabs, mainly in the internet and the mobile application, mainly for Arab countries. It will be a fund for between $10 million to $15 million to help that people. And we signed up with about 20 people for mentorship that they did really great exits here in Israel, that they are very keen and they are very helpful and they will support these startups. And Google and Microsoft will be part of this incubator, Cisco and eBay as well. And they will give us their systems, they will give us their mentorship as well, people from there, and they put some money already on there. So actually we built the whole infrastructure to be able to get really the right people, to get the right infrastructure. We have the money, we have the incubator to hug these people, to tell them, don't afraid, don't have a fear, we will be with you and we will take you ahead. This incubator will be opened by the end of this year. We already finished all the what needed. And that's, I believe, part of the little solution to start with, and it will give some hopes for the others. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Imad. Before we move to Bjorn, one very short question. I feel that somehow in the last 2 or 3 years there is beginning of change, at least if not on the level of accomplishment, on the level of ambitious. I know that today in Nazareth there is Mobile Monday once a month, and about 200 to 300 young Arab Israelis who are involved in high tech show up. Yeah. Would you share that there is some kind of change, beginning of change?
Actually, we feel that there's started to be really change, especially with the young people, that they are 20, 22, 24, 25 years old. These people, you know, I believe that they have a bigger dream than previous people. They can think big. They are very open to the internet. You know everything what's happening worldwide. You know, today everything is transparent, and they can see, and they start to learn. They start to see that there is a big potential, and I think this is really a great start. All what we need is to give them the opportunity to come and to say, okay, you have the idea, come, we'll help you to go ahead.
So the dreaming fear is beginning to break a little bit.
I hope so.
And I have to tell you, you speak with any young Arab, you can guess who is his role model. You know, I was in Madrid last week. I met a young guy, 23, Yusuf Zahir from Nazareth, and he told me, Imad. So you are inspiring the dreams, Imad, and this is great. And one last on the positive side. You know, we have many difficulties, but we have some few positive sides. We have to congratulate you for the accomplishment of the cousin of your wife, right? Why? Can you share it with us? The cousin of Rim, who was nominated 2 weeks ago.
The cousin of Rim was nominated on University of Haifa for heading, I don't know how you
the nanobiology department.
Yeah, that this is the first time happening in Haifa University, and this is, thank you.
Good. Imad, is always terrific to have you. Bjorn, can you share with this group of uninformed people the gist of your research about how to create creativity hubs?
Who here knows Startup Genome or has ever heard of Startup Genome? Few people. And who has never heard of Startup Genome? All right. More.
So you
Great.
have here about 20% who heard about it, 30% who didn't hear about it, and 50% who don't know what we want from their life.
Great. So we started off probably almost 3 years ago now. We're sort of inspired by this global explosion of entrepreneurship and really seeing that there are startups popping out of the ground all over the world. And also seeing that the vast majority of job creation, specifically in the US, but also in other countries around the world, came from those high growth companies. And also seeing that most of the economic rejuvenation came from those high growth companies. However, at the same time, we see that most of those companies fail. The vast majority of them fail. And the reason they fail is not because of competition, but mostly because of self-destruction, where those companies essentially very efficiently execute the unnecessary. So they do things that later on turn out to be irrelevant. And the reason why they do this is not because the founders are stupid, but because there's a lack of visibility into the market and into your own processes. So this overwhelming uncertainty that founders have to deal with, and specifically within the software space, where many times you're tackling new markets that are unknown. And that really inspired Startup Genome as initially a research where we started looking at, why do those companies fail? Why do they succeed? And based on the research, we built a product called Startup Compass that was essentially like a digital mentor to startups. You can sign up, you put in a bunch of data, marketing, sales, financial data, and it gives back benchmarks on your metrics and recommendations and helps you to make decisions. And this product then fueled further research, and part of that was the Startup Ecosystem report, which we published, that started looking at globally at different ecosystems, how they compare, what are their strengths and weaknesses. And that's where we saw that Tel Aviv really stood out as one of the hubs for innovation and startups within the technology space. I think there's probably a lot of things that really, in the end of the day, make a hub special. But in the end of the day, it's about people, and I think that kind of connects to a lot what was said earlier. A place that can bring people together, can connect them, can allow them to sort of live up to their best, that makes all the difference. And Tel Aviv is one such place. And
what do you mean, one of the best? Can you be more specific? One of the best. Number one after Silicon Valley.
Yeah. So yeah, number one after Silicon Valley. There is you can quote me on this. It's I have seen now a number of different ecosystems globally. I've visited many different ecosystems. I've talked with policymakers, entrepreneurs from ecosystems worldwide. I just came from Kuala Lumpur, where I gave a talk. I met with the finance minister and the prime minister, and we talked about sort of their innovation ecosystem. And one of the things that they are struggling with is that they give money only to people who from Malaysia. They are very focused on the country or on the people who are within this country, but they don't. One of the things that they don't see is that this innovation ecosystem is global and it's connected, and there's a network and there's people that are going back and forth, and it's about being able to attract the best of the best to come into their place. And I told them, one of the things that is very easy to do and doesn't cost a lot of money, but that will make an enormous difference, is to get more people from other countries to come to Kuala Lumpur, to plug Kuala Lumpur into the global ecosystem. And that's, I think, something where Tel Aviv so far has been very, very strong as an ecosystem that is not just strong locally, but that almost out of necessity or out of cultural reasons is really plugged into the global innovation scene. And probably almost every entrepreneur in Tel Aviv at some point makes it out to Silicon Valley, to New York, to London, to other places, and at the same time you have a lot of people from other countries that come to Tel Aviv. So.
Thank you very much, Bjorn. I would like to expand a little bit about this thing that you said. Whereas until 20 years ago, a person would go to work for 8 hours in order to earn enough money that he will able to maintain his lifestyle, take care of the family, clothes, food, etc. So he said, I'm giving up 8 hours and I work wherever to earn money. Today, when you are talking about the creative class, their all assets is above their shoulders. And when they move with their own machinery. When Imad was in Delta, he had tons of manufacturing lines and sewing machines and knitting machines and warehouses and I don't know what. Today, he created the whole thing with desks and chairs that you can't find anywhere and computer you can't find anywhere, and mainly created it with whatever he has above his shoulder. So, and another thing which happened, that the creative people are looking today on the 8 hours they are working in the job, or the 9 or the 10, as part of their lifestyle. They are not willing anymore to differentiate between life at work and life after work. So, since they can move anywhere, and since the quality of life is important to them in the workplace, we see that they tend to aggregate in cities which are offering things which has nothing to do necessarily with high-tech. They will go to places where there is a liberalism, where they can walk to work, when there are coffee shops. They tend to be in the urban areas, and this is well manifested in Israel by Rothschild Boulevard. And they would like, time is up. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and see you next year.
Thank you all very much. We are proud to present now our next speaker, a director at KPMG with an impressive record, who will share with us one of the fascinating research projects she leads. We are happy to welcome Ms. Caroline Haynes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caroline Haynes, and I'm from a firm called KPMG. I realize it's really difficult right before lunch when everyone's very, very hungry. So I promise I will stick to my allotted time. So my name is Caroline Haynes, and I'm from a firm called KPMG that I suspect many of you know of as an accountancy firm. So first of all, let me say I'm not an accountant. I'm not going to talk about accountancy, but I'm very fond of accountants because they do pay for people like me to do interesting research on different subjects such as cities. So I'm here to talk about cities of the future and some research we've been doing. But before I start, let me just ask a question, which is of all of you out in the audience, who has heard of London and has an opinion about London? Put your hand up. That's pretty much everyone, as I would suspect. Okay, we'll go through the same exercise. Who has heard of Manchester? You don't have to have been there, but heard of Manchester, have an opinion about Manchester. Okay, pretty much everyone. Let's keep going. Sheffield. Sheffield. A few more. Okay. Sunderland. Sunderland. Wow, we have a few. Okay. And then my final is Hull. Not hell, Hull. A few, Hull, indeed, okay. Well, that's very interesting. So basically, the reason I went through that is the reason we started this research is because in the UK, we have a lot of cities. And a lot of those cities were incredibly important just a few centuries ago. So Hull was one of the most important ports in the UK. Sheffield was very famous for making steel. Sunderland was very, very famous for making some of the most amazing ships that took things all around the world. And about 30, 40 years ago, industry just fell out of those cities for a whole variety of reasons, some political, some not. And as a result, these cities have been struggling. They've just been bumping along the bottom for a long, long period of time. And various central governments, I used to work for the current Prime Minister David Cameron, I worked for the Labour administration. You know, they keep thinking about how can we get central government to fix these cities, and it is impossible. And that's why we started this research, which was to see, are there any other cities around the world that struggled, went through periods of change and transition, and are now very interesting, innovative cities. So if we move forward. So what we did is we started to do some research, and we went through and pulled a list of a good 20, 30, 40 cities around the world together to see those that have been through quite an interesting period of reinvention over recent history, so not a long time ago. And after lots of discussions and lots of analytics, we came up with this list, which actually is a good 12 or 15 cities, but we have limited time, so we're just going to talk about these very quickly. And these are cities that have been through quite remarkable transformations. And I would suspect that some of you wouldn't be aware of all of them, because it tends to take about 10 to 15 years for a city's reinvention to move around the world. And everyone becomes aware of it then. So starting with the different cities, Malmö is a city in Sweden. It is often referred to as the Detroit of Sweden, and you will see a theme. Many of these cities are often referred to as the Detroit of their country. Malmö was very famous for shipbuilding. It had, in fact, one employer called Kockums that basically took care of the entire city. It went bankrupt. The city absolutely fell apart. Not only did it lose its entire economy, it lost its entire spirit, it lost its reason for being. No one knew what to do. And through a very interesting period of reinvention, what they have done is redesign themselves as a clean tech urban laboratory. They've done some really quite extraordinary things, building on engineering and design and some of the principles that actually have been in the city for a long, long time. Of course, you recognize the city in green, Tel Aviv, which, of course, for those of you who are from Tel Aviv or Jerusalem know the story that, 10, 20 years ago, Tel Aviv was a city that had some growth pains. The population was declining, the cost of living was skyrocketing, there were difficulties with the oil crisis, and really what's happened over the last 10, 15 years has been extraordinarily unique and has brought us really to this conference and conferences and others where we're talking about the innovation. Two cities in South Korea. The South Koreans are doing some amazing things at the moment and really thinking about cities and urban planning in utterly different ways. So Changwon here, often referred to as the Detroit of South Korea, you'll see my theme here, was a city that was known for very heavy industry and a lot of assembly before it went off to Taiwan. The city became unbelievably polluted, and basically lots of people left. And what they did is they did something really, really very provocative, is they decided, since they were known for being so polluted, what they would do is actually go completely the opposite direction and become the first green city of Asia. And people thought that they were just absolutely cuckoo. This is not something to really worry about. So they did that, and then they also did another really unique thing, is they created an artist's village in the middle of Changwon. So they gave up a big chunk of the city and said to artists, come live here for free for 2 years, and we will take care of you. And they literally changed the whole dynamic of the city. Songdo, which I believe is a sister city of Tel Aviv, if I'm not wrong, which is part of Incheon, which is a city that came into difficulties because it was very close to Seoul, and as Seoul grew, it sort of took some of the people and the efforts out. And so there they have actually built a brand new city which is out of reclaimed land, reclaimed ocean in something unbelievable like 8 years. And they're trying to be the big international R&D clean tech super city. We were out there a couple of weeks ago, and it is just phenomenal what they have built in a short period of time. Bilbao is a story that I think perhaps is the most familiar to people because of the Guggenheim. And a lot of people in a lot of cities in the UK as well sort of think, oh, we'll get a Guggenheim and, you know, the city will be saved. It was a really, really complicated story, and a lot of graft went in there. But basically they were shipbuilding, it was very polluted. They went through, 10 years of cleaning the ground, cleaning the river, literally changing the city and how it looked into what it is today. 2 American cities, Oklahoma City. I don't know if there are any Americans there, but there were a couple of Americans. Oklahoma City is sort of interesting because a few years ago it was known to be one of the fattest American cities and the highest unemployment rate. And they have absolutely turned that around, and it is now a very hip and cool city that millennials actually go to after university. And so they have some amazing big corporates that are now traveling to go and get them. And Denver, which if you were a big fan of black and white movies, used to be a big mining town. Now it's gone into telecoms, communications. And for the sake of time, I'll skip over, but Hamburg, Ahmedabad in India, there are a bunch of others. So they've all done, people are talking about them. So after we're about 2/3 of the way through. After we did hundreds of hours of interviews, we collected data, we crunched it, we analyzed it, we thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be so complicated, how are we going to write this up? The picture is unbelievably simple. And so this is basically a manifestation of that picture. So the cities that have managed to really turn themselves around, they have this magnetic quality. They don't go after tourists. They don't go after businesses. Everyone's naturally talking about them. And they come. Businesses come. People come. Tourists come. It becomes a very organic process. And so our theory was if we could figure out how cities that were not doing that terribly well a few years ago had utterly changed themselves so that they were now very magnetic, if we could isolate and pinpoint, what it was that they did, that would be useful for any city, even if it was not going through a period of decline, because everyone can become a little bit more magnetic, and it's a very useful process. So what we did is we found this is sort of the formula. This is it. It's very simple. And it starts with a very clear vision, which is a really waffly word that I'll go through and talk about a little bit more in a minute. It's a bit like strategy and things like that. But if you follow the magnet from the top through to the bottom, it goes in a C, and that was the sequence of steps that people took. So they went through a physical renewal absolutely first. They then went through a quality of life renewal, and then they thought about the economy and the commerce. And for people who've worked in urban planning, who've worked in cities, who've worked in government, this is actually quite counterintuitive thinking, because everyone always starts with the commercial and the economic strategy. And they say, I want to be the startup place. I want to be the new solar panel industry heartland. And that you actually need to go the other way around. And so what was interesting is all of the different cities, they fell upon the same formula. They went through the same sequence. They did not worry about business, commerce, economy until they fixed the physical. They did not worry about that until they looked at the quality of life. So let me just now whiz through and give you some examples. So we talked about vision and strategy and things like that. And these are some of the statements. You'll recognize the one up on the right, Tel Aviv, the non-stop city. And what they did is they came up with a very clean and clear identity of what they wanted their city to stand for. So these weren't things like, we want to be innovative, we want to be happy, we want to be, business creations. They went through a really clear picture of what the place should be like as a place to live in 10, 15 years. And for every single one of those statements, you can see that at the heart of it, it was making the city a great place to live in. It was the most important thing by far. And the entire, all of the changes fell off of that. That was absolutely the heartland. And then to put some clarity around who they were trying to attract. So who would the city be great for people to, which people were they trying to pull in? Who are they trying to magnetize? And here, there was quite a bit of analysis. There was a lot of thought. It wasn't just random guessing. So in Malmö, because it had been a shipbuilding city, it had gone through this long period of decline. It was a really old city. The average age was in its late 40s, early 50s. And young people, they just didn't want to come to Malmö. They didn't want to know. They wanted to go to Stockholm. They wanted to go to other places. And so what they decided is, for their vision, what they would have to do is become a place that literally attracted the young from around the Scandinavian countries. They would need to magnetize and pull a brand new population in. And they would do that by becoming this urban sustainable laboratory. So the actual city would be the laboratory. You would sort of attract people who are very interested in clean tech, environmental type issues. And the city itself would become a paragon of examples of how to live like that, and that would pull people in. Bilbao, let me just mention, because it's an interesting contrast, Bilbao also had an older population because the young would go to different cities. And what the people of Bilbao did is they said, okay, we don't want a brand new population. We're actually, quite a tight, close-knit community, have a very, very strong identity. And so what they did is said that instead what they would really like to do is to make sure the young don't leave Bilbao. So the 18, 19, 20-year-olds, particularly who are quite creative, that they don't actually go off to Barcelona, to London, to Paris. So instead what they were trying to do was to magnetize and keep the people who were from Bilbao in Bilbao. And so off of that very clear statement, so for Bilbao, it was building on the heritage of engineering, being very good at metal and machinery, of moving into a city that was very famous for global culture and design, which I have to say, the people of Bilbao, speaking to them, thought was just nuts 20 years ago. I mean, really just loopy and impossible. And so what all of these cities did is they took that statement and they went through the physical, the quality of life, and the commercial, just in an unrelentingly disciplined way. So everything that they did supported this. So for example, physical renewal. This picture is from Bilbao. So the first thing that all of these cities did is they started to clean up the physical elements of the city. They would increase the pavements. They would look at public spaces. They would make sure that there are parks. Because Bilbao wanted to be known for design and culture, they weren't designing just any old park. They got people like Philip Stark to come and design outdoor living rooms. So this is an example of a public space in Bilbao where you can see the Stark lamps, and it's sort of like a living room. So everything that they did supported this vision in this picture. This is Malmö. So we were talking about the fact that they wanted to become very green and sustainable. So how do you do that? How do you put a signal to the world? Because remember, they wanted to attract brand new people to come and move into Malmö. How do you do that? Well, they took a huge punt, and they said, well, let's take some of the most polluted land in all of Europe, which was Western Harbor, which is the area of Malmö where all of the heavy machining and shipbuilding had been going on. I mean, it was just so contaminated you could barely walk on it. Clean it up and turn it into some of the most progressive eco-sustainable clean tech housing, and invite architects from around the world and have a huge architectural competition to build housing for people, and that's what they did. This is Western Harbor. The various houses are designed by different architects, and they still have experimental houses where people in the city can watch the energy consumption. It's become an amazing, amazing place, and as I said, home to about 2,500 families, and it's famous around the world. It's extraordinary, and that one move, really signaled that this was a completely different place to live. Other examples, just flipping through very quickly, in Asia, I talked about in Changwon, they went down the environmental route. They introduced bicycle schemes. Bilbao, they introduced a subway. Even the subway was designed by a famous architect. So it's that consistency point. Right, on to quality life, which is what we've been talking a lot about today. So again, once the physical renewal has been completed, is actually thinking about the elements, what people want to fill their days with. Because that's incredibly important as well. And for those who are somewhat skeptical about the view of government and the influence they can have, I mean, a city government can impact every single one of these things through licensing, through zoning, through taxation. And so for all of the cities that have bounced back, they came and were able to focus on the aspects of their city that would be most attractive to the populations that they were trying to attract or keep. So for cities that are looking for, young, urban, dynamic, creative, startups, culture, all of that, what they did is the pictures at the top are graffiti from the various cities that we've been. Graffiti was not just allowed, it's encouraged. Skate parks built, lots of food, all the sorts of things that we've been talking about. And then finally, the commercial strategy sort of fell off the back of that. So it just made sure that there was consistency across all three. So for cities that think that they need or would like to compete on a global level and actually get, huge IBM R&D research labs, things like that in their city, the physical, the quality of life, all of the elements need to be able to compete with the other global cities because that's where they'll be thinking about placing themselves. For domestic business, one has to be able to compete with other cities in the same country. And for startups, this is evidence that to be a startup city, which is an aspiration that so many cities we've spoken to have, you have to be a city that competes for the young, whether it's Singapore, whether it's London, whether it's, a variety of different places, and offer that physical and quality of life environment. And just quickly, it sounds so obvious, but you'd be amazed at the number of cities we speak to, the number of clients we have where they got it wrong. So for instance, I was in a city in the north of England just last week, and they spent 15 million pounds on a brand new startup center. And they showed me around and walked around, and it was empty. It was absolutely empty. I mean, it's quite tragic. All the rooms, no one was there. And they said, but we put all this money, we've advertised, we've marketed, we built this, why is this not working? And it was because they hadn't thought about any other dimension. It was still a crap place to live, It's that simple, and people want a place to live that's nice, that's fun, that's interesting, and particularly when they have so many other choices. And people skip that. They go to the head and they forget the heart. And these cities that are very magnetic and very successful, they do both extremely well. So that was a really short summary. The research itself will be coming out in January. So if you are interested in receiving it, to my details, and that is it. You can have lunch.
Thank you, Caroline. Immediately following our lunch break, we'll pick right